Makes me so mad when I forget my hat. Just look like a turtle.
You always look like a turtle.
Allie says I look like a turtle.
Well, welcome to another Gray Pages with Taylor and Mr. Turtle. Um,
Sorry,
so
right before John welcomed us,
Inside joke.
Hugh was saying that he feels like he looks like a
I'm leaving that in.
200-year-old turtle without his hat on. His
200.
his green and hunter green shirt doesn't help.
No, it's
Paired
perfect.
with my sea green shirt. That's
Yeah.
kind of turtleish. So that's why we're laughing.
So, by the way, so just as like leading us into conversation here, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I know there's been a lot of like things going on with you guys, decisions you're trying to make and have been making. And I'm just eager to kind of catch up on them myself and hear like what you've been thinking, what you're doing. So kind of like, and so I think we're gonna maybe make an episode. We'll see where it goes, but like, what's been going on?
Yeah, it's been a miserable, intriguing season.
That's the title. Okay.
In the Brave City way of life, things will happen along the way that you are super proud of, and people will identify as, oh, that's your great contribution. But the reality is that everything shifts, and we're having to learn some of that right now. People kind of know the work here in Alton for the Post Commons. They've heard the story of us receiving the building, getting it for free, raising money, building it out, kind of creating something that our town really needed and wanted and still wants. So it's been a legit real story. I put a tattoo on my arm of it because to me it was the most significant thing our family has done together. So like it's real.
Sure.
Along the way though, John, other things have happened in the neighborhoods with people that don't care all about coffee, people that can't even afford a cup of coffee,
Or at least a cup of our coffee.
Yeah, a cup of our coffee. We have given free coffee away and people don't like it. That's happened. I've seen it.
Yeah, we're trying to create some lower grade.
We should. I would enjoy it more
Lower
if we had a
priced
lower
coffee.
grade.
Just have a 50-cup percolator of Folgers in the corner like that. You could just have that. Yeah.
What I was raised on, but anyway, long story short, we went into kind of a prayer focus, we think roughly 3 years ago. And what came out of that with our team was that the kind of the deepest broken parts of our town had to do with mostly kids. The youth, there's just nothing for the kids here in this town. There's not really an identifiable youth ministry that we know of. There's not much at the school level. There's no ability to have art classes in elementary schools around here. There's no sidewalks. So, it's just hard for kids to get around. There's no remember back in our day, you'd go blister up your feet, go to the roller skating rink or theater or the mall. You could always go find and hang out. Like we had nothing.
Yeah.
So that came out, and out of that prayer time, without us really trying to move towards it, a lot of our key leaders started to work with kids. Taylor and his family started a basketball league for kids mostly that didn't have, a great family, no dads or whatever. And our kids started working at the high school. There's a lot of stuff going on. It was still is very related to the kids. So frustration is that more needs came up, especially in regards to leadership. Like we were drawing really good leaders that wanted to work with kids, but they couldn't afford to live. So now we're trying to help families figure out how to buy a house and be present in the neighborhood. And so there became a need for money. And one of the things that we had to learn early on, I had this vision that we would do Post Commons and we would make just a ton of money. And then we go help a lot of people. And we just, after 6 years, we realized this is not probably going to be profitable. The offering was to just stay alive, be there for the city, but we just didn't have the resource to go after some of these other issues related to poverty issues in our city. And so Taylor and I were talking one day, and the idea just came up, like, would we be willing to sell the post? Because obviously, because it was a gift, there's $1 million in equity in our space. We can't get the money very easily because banks don't want buildings on their bankroll if we were to foreclose. So, we've tried to get equity out and then go use that money. So it's just been hard to get at the asset equity. So we thought, well, would we be willing to sell it and then reallocate that money back mostly towards youth and family issues? And long story short, both Taylor and I were like, yeah, I think we'd be totally willing to do that. Brought it before our team, all of who are employed, by this, and they all said, yeah, let's do it. So, but we didn't feel like we go public. We felt like it had to be kind of a weird God thing. So we, start to maybe put out a few feelers to people in our city that know what we do. And long story short, again, somebody does a week later offer, like they said they wanted our building. So we kind of, we started with the sense of, oh, this must be a God thing, a God conversation.
Yeah.
We were all one heart, one mind, and then the buyer comes. So we went, oh, kind of deep down, it's like, for sure this is going to happen because this is just how things have happened here.
Sounds like the whole bread on the trail thing,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And the vision of the new people was good. It would probably employ more people. They wanted to keep the building the same for the town. That was important to us. But we struggled a little bit with the posture of the people. We didn't feel like, we could tell it wasn't hitting with our employees. They didn't really trust or like these new people. I think mostly because they loved us. They'd say this feels like we work for a family.
Yep.
Who are these? So, it started to get awkward. The team buying it started to do some weird stuff in the building, like they'd bring people through the kitchen unannounced and just like, hey, I think we'll change this, and all before we'd even told our staff. So we were doing like a weekly cleanup. And it was kind of annoying, but we were like, this seems like this was the Lord. So let's just fight through it.
Sure.
And but we still have no contract. They seemed like they were really into what we wanted to do to help kids. We told them we're not taking any of the money. It's all going through the nonprofit. So we'll just simply be reallocating. It'll help the whole city. Like, we'll all be in this thing together. So we felt a sense of partnership. And but we just couldn't get a contract from them. It was weird. So 3 weeks before it was supposed to close, which would have been this week, it's painful to say. 3 weeks in, I'm like, hey, we really have to have a contract. So they send the contract over, and they had gotten us down quite a bit financially, which started to get weird because we're like, well, I thought you guys wanted us to do some more cool stuff for the town. So we're wondering why they kept asking for 200,000 off, then 100,000 or whatever. So we kept going, okay, fine, we can work with that. We're trying to help them do what they do. And we thought, well, it's still enough money, we can do what we're going to do.
Yep.
Well, when the contract comes, without asking, they had taken some more money off, and they put in there a no compete clause, specifically naming me and our main manager that we could not operate any businesses that were related to the Post, which they knew we were
Coffee, you couldn't do coffee.
the roaster. So,
Yeah.
and they knew that we were very clear. In fact, they were going to be our primary coffee account. So the whole time we were like, well, they're on board. They want us to keep going. And then all of a sudden,
roaster. Yeah.
the roaster, and now all of a sudden it's a non-compete. We can't do that. So long story short, John, we said, deal off, see ya. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're now 3 weeks from that point. So we're still reeling. We lost some staff over it. Pretty sure we lost some money. We lost a lot of culture in our building for a season. Our team got really exhausted emotionally from all this up and down. So now we're rebuilding, but there's a lot in there I think we need to unpack, because there's issues related to discerning God's will. There's issues related to God doing things that we may not see that he's doing. For instance, right now, I think our street cred is way higher than it even was before, because nobody wanted us to sell. Everybody was sad when they heard that we were selling to this group. And so right now it's kind of increased street cred even more. It's forced us to try to figure out how to be actually profitable on phase 2. There's some issues there that we'll get into related to the posture of our team to be willing to give up something that we thought was pretty sacred. We'll get into that idea a little bit. And there's also issues related to, and I've learned this a few times, that even when you have the right plan, the God plan, it doesn't necessarily mean that Babylon doesn't win a battle here and there. And maybe it was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen. And maybe we have to grapple with that. So did I miss any like key parts of the story, you think?
No, I mean, I think that the story is accurate. I think everyone's perspective of what happened is going to be unique. It'd be so interesting to get 5 different people from our core kind of owner class or bounded class to come in and say, how have you seen this? I mean, some people were,
Dude, that would be fun. I would interview him if that would be
some
a real
people
thing,
were
I would do
elated.
that.
Some people were so thankful
That we didn't sell.
that we didn't sell.
Right.
I think Hugh and I were really the most significant champions of selling. And the reason is because we are never content with, getting to the top of the mountain, so to speak. Like the Post was a vision that we would bring peace and elegance and community and incubation to our city through food and drink. And we did.
You did.
And it's here. And it's anybody who knows Alton knows this place is special. But we got more work to do.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I remember, just real quick, I remember being in conversations with you guys, processing this at the front end and talking about the youth. And like, it was very clear. This was like really moving you guys, like in terms of like, yeah, like whatever it takes to make these moves, to invest in the children of our town. Like I mean, I remember you guys just like, you're hearing your hearts in that. It was like so clear, like, oh, you've kind of been tapped. Your attention has been tapped to this. There's something calling you over
well,
here.
and look, it's the clearest idea, God idea of this calling we have of restoring
Totally 100%.
the breached cities,
Yeah.
right? Of being repairers of the breach.
Yeah.
Is that right? Am I saying that right? Even the
Isaiah actually says repairers of city streets.
yeah, even the idea of setting tables in the presence of our enemies, man, it's like the most significant power in our context has been the destruction of the family, and how the generational effects that it's had on neighborhoods, on life expectancy, on friggin' like
Education,
mass
system.
incarceration, school, all of that. So to be clear, none of us are like youth people. I don't think. I mean, your son-in-law and daughter are
in our time. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I did 12 years of youth for Christ,
but none of us are like,
I never want to return to that.
right. None of us are like, we just long to work with youth.
Yeah.
We see the heart of God in defending the fatherless and in being restorers of or repairers of city streets. So my point, I just wanted to say that for a second, so anyone listening can see my heart is we're going, like we've been saying this a lot, John, all things are sacred, but there should be no sacred cows. And so the post is a great example. Like it's not a sacred cow for us. If we can sell it, and it's caused us to really question our own kind of lingo, our own principles or nuances. Like one of our most significant nuances is you don't need money to do ministry. And we sit back today, right now, whatever today is, I guess it's Friday, August something. We sit back and we go, man, if we just had $1 million, like we would fund these five
And
leaders.
both are true, just like scriptures. They're true, but they're paradoxical.
Yep.
Because when you say you don't need money to do ministry, we all know that's actually true.
That is true.
No, it is
but
true, and
then you need some money to do some other things.
But it puts me back in this place that I feel like I've been in for 25 years of, man, we need you. Like it's kind of the idea of war. It's why they introduced the draft. We need fighters.
Right.
We need soldiers. We need workers. And money tends to motivate that. Money tends to cause people to go, I want to do it. I'm in. But when you just say like, but what if you just came? Come on, like, and be a part. I don't know. It seems that there is, and we were having this conversation before the podcast this morning about how consumerism is such a powerful spirit that consumerism is such a powerful spirit that it just seeps its way into any movement, into any idea or ideology, that it becomes like, well, I need this, and can you help me, and what about me, and where's my food, and where's my livelihood, and I get it. So we're like, okay, well, let's sell the building. It's sacred, but it's not a sacred cow, and we'll take that revenue and we'll reinvest it all into the city. So I'll end with this, John, and I hope you're storing up some fodder, but so it all fell apart, and we had 3 different unique voices from around the country, including a dream that my wife had. I think it was a dream, maybe a daydream. So we'll add her as a 4th that specifically said, this feels like a Abraham, Isaac type situation. Like, and here's how, here's what one amazing.
I told you but that made me mad.
I want you to tell that story though, about how you got mad and then how that changed. But here's what one woman said, amazing intercessor that's been in our life for a long time. You guys felt like God gave you a promise, and the post was the kind of the manifestation of that promise.
Evidence, fruit. You're over the target zone.
Yep. So, oh, wow, God fulfilled his promise. Now lay that promise down. Here's the one to fuel a bigger promise. Well, in the Abraham Isaac story, God says stop, and he provides the offering.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're still waiting on that. We're waiting on the provision of the outcome of the offering.
Yes.
But yeah, we received it. We're like, okay, that's fine. We're not interested in controlling the hand of God or any of that. And we are passionate about what you were about to reference, like our faith being a testimony. So yeah, that's kind of where we've landed with all this. Hugh can tell you why the Abraham Isaac stuff made him mad.
Well, I mean, it probably makes, for most of us, when we think about it, Abraham, like God asking us to like gut check, hey, can I have it back? The reason why it made me mad, John, was that God's done that to me many, many times. And I think every time I went, sure, I actually think I'm great at the Abraham. Like he should have picked me. I easily So I was like, why would you be jacking with us again on this one? Come on. Like, we've passed this test. Taylor made it a really, I had never thought about it, but the Abraham Isaac isn't an issue of test. It's an issue of witness
Testimony.
and
Yeah.
testimony. It's he wasn't asking Abraham to give up Isaac, maybe even because Abraham needed to learn anything. It was going to be a story for the entire human race about the nature of God and what God's doing in the world. And so the witness of, and we've already had people go, because you guys were willing to give it up, it said something to me about, it was a larger witness to the character of your network, to the heart of what you're really trying to do. And it's maybe into infinity, people will go, yeah, I remember when those guys were about to sell to those guys and they didn't. So that's the part that I had to go, oh, maybe the test isn't for me. Maybe the story is a much larger story about what God's doing. But I'd still say, in that story, the ram is provided, right? The sacrifice, the alternative. And that is what we're still looking for. We're kind of looking for, like, we're starting to get little inklings of why God allowed that whole process to happen and then directed us out of it. My guess is 2 years from now, we will probably be going, phew, can you believe we were that close to giving up this that we're now experiencing? My guess is that's what we're going to feel at some point. But yeah, I don't know. That may speak to some people in this. I mean, all of us have things that we build that do become sacred. And somebody listening needs to hear that nothing should be sacred. Your buildings are not sacred. Your organizational structure cannot become sacred as far as a cow. Like, you have to be willing to give it up, change it, morph it, tack to the left, readjust. Now we're looking at new business ideas. It's caused us to go, okay, we can't just stay the same. So that's a great message for our whole community. We can't just stay the same. Some of us were bored, so we were looking forward to selling just so we could enjoy a new season of like creativity again. But right now we still get to be creative. We're like desperate to find new ways to, and we're even desperate to find ways to still go after the kids, even if we don't have the $1 million in the bank. Like, we have to go, oh, maybe God's going to teach us, we can still go after this. So quite a few amazing lessons, honestly.
There's so much in all of this. But so as you use the Abraham Isaac story and you guys both say like, but God provided the sacrifice. What comes to mind, and take it for what it is, what I keep thinking as I'm hearing the story is the like assumption that it hasn't been provided. And as I listen, I go, I think it has. And so here's what I think that sacrifice is the continued work. So you're saying like, we were getting bored, but now we're desperate. And now we have to rethink like the game plan. We have to go through like season 2 of this endeavor. And I think the work ahead of you is the sacrifice, is the thing that has been given to you in place of it. Like, that, just as I listen, because this is like, I'm picturing this chart. I got really obsessed with like flow state, like reading about flow state at one point. And there's this chart they use where, like, let's say the bottom left is like boredom and the top right is anxiety, like overwhelming anxiety. And the place you want to live is right in the middle of those things. That's like, you want to push yourself toward the thing that's like really pushing you, but not overwhelming anxiety. Like, don't surf the 20-foot wave when you've only been on chest high waves. It's going to kill you, but you can go a little bigger where you feel like you're going to die. And that's where it like puts you in the place, in the zone.
Right.
And that's the zone of like which to me is like a taste of eternal life. It's like where we really wake up and lose track. And so I don't know how that lands to you guys, but like as I hear it, I think like interestingly, like, and by the way, the thing you're saying, people need to hear the story, because I think everyone who heard you guys say we're willing to let this go, it did sound to all of us who've been there crazy, but it made sense because it's like, well, God's leading us into this other thing, and we're,
Right.
we hold these. There is no sacred cow. Like it's all held with an open hand. And like for me, like something really core to the like life of the following Jesus is like the willingness to die, right? And so it's like the willingness to let go, or like you said, like I've been pretty like, take it, God, like you can have your will be done, whatever you want, you can have it all. You can have my life, my family, whatever, my enterprise. And like what I see in so many, let's say churches, but institutions in general, is like the deviation from the call over, like it has to go on. We can't let it die. We can't give up. Like that thing, its survival becomes more important than the actual original call. And so in that way, I'm like, it's such a right posture. And then at some level, it's like, okay, you don't sacrifice it. And the sacrifice that I hear being provided is like, you got real work ahead of you now.
Yeah.
And you're back in a place of desperation and creativity and not boredom.
Does that encourage you or discourage you?
Discourage.
Yeah,
Well,
because honestly, I think that was
Well, it
part
kind of
the-
reminds me, it reminds me of something I said last night. I don't know if you caught this in this text exchange, but we had a text exchange with a guy who's been really impacted by our book. And, he has the ability to get behind some really big dreams that we have for the country, the world. Well, let's say our context locally, leaders in our country and leaders around the world. And I just said, hey man, we don't need any more fans. We need advocates and backers.
Yeah.
Like, put your freaking money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean money. It could mean anything. It could mean advocacy.
Leverage your relationships.
Yeah.
Do whatever.
Similar to here, and
basically show some desperation.
this is just the raw, immediate response, John. It's like,
I love it.
even here, like people could go, oh, Hugh, we're just so thankful for, and it's like, cool. I don't care. I don't need any more fans, man. Pick up a shovel or, be on your way. And certainly there's nuance to that. In real time, no spirit-filled person should ever respond that way directly, or directly is not the right word, solely. But there are moments throughout this, John, where you're on hour 7 driving bikes out to a new storage unit because your storage unit at the mall got rented out from under you with no warning or whatsoever. And somebody goes, man, John, John is incredible. That's really cool for about a year or two. But after 17 years, you're like, appreciate it. You want to help me take these bikes? Or anyway.
So is it discouraging to you because John is surmising that the RAM is that we just have a lot more work to do?
The work is great. I think it feels to be somewhat of a mixture of isolation and loneliness.
Yeah.
Again, because of our talks about empire, settling into empire is just such a sweet feeling. It's like when we go on vacation or something. It's just relaxing. You know what?
Well,
I don't care anymore.
yeah, I'm just not gonna lift heavy things anymore.
So the idea of exile or some interpretations of the scripture I'm referencing will say like aliens or sojourner on this planet is not a fun thing. It's not like this is awesome.
Right.
No, we all want to be citizens somewhere where we belong and we feel a sense of like camaraderie and unity and like we're going, you know. This is why veterans are so linked for life, because they were so deeply entrenched in the fight together. They'll never forget that time.
Yeah, they actually can't leave it.
Yeah, most of them want to go back.
But I think this is why I initially was discouraged, is this has been for me, an 8-year burn.
Yep.
I was a little excited that, hey, we would get to kind of dream again and have a checkbook full of, where before every day was like such a faith walk. It was like, I got guys on the roof right now on the post, and I know that bill is going to be 118 grand, and they're going to be done in 3 weeks. I mean, it was like that every week building this thing out. It's like money was coming in, but not enough. And then we had to sell our house to cover. I mean, it was like, so to think at the end of 8 years, like this thing's done, like we did a good work here and we sacrificed. The idea that the ram is sitting there in the bushes smiling at me going, we just got to go again. And this last couple of weeks has been a lot of like heavy, for Taylor as well, heavy physical labor in the heat of the summer here, and you know, right off the Mississippi River Delta. You know, I mean, I think I got literally heat stroke 4 of the last 6 days. So like the idea of like, oh, we got to get back after it with the post, rebuild the team, the culture, repaint the front door again, start like, we got to go. That is, but I think you might be right, you know, because deep down I love the work, but there are seasons where I think for all of us, when we've built something, we just want to get out of it and move on to a new day, you know.
So I'll give one life analogy, get kind of personal. I'm taking my youngest daughter to school today, and we're zoned for kind of the lower income elementary schools.
As you should be.
And she's struggling a little bit. And she's voicing those struggles. She's actually said a couple of times, I'd really like to not go to school here. And part of the reason is there's some serious behavior problems.
Right.
And 3 of our 5 kids have had this exact experience in this exact school context, which is, it's like, my wife and I, if people know us, they know we'll change schools in a second. We're not holding to some kind of standard. It's all about kind of, you know, I'm not giving parenting advice right now. I'm more giving a kind of a parallel to what we're talking about. So all that stuff is peripheral, but as we're going there, we're just talking. So I feel a little bit of a sense of kind of the Lord speaking. So it's just me and her in the car, and I ask her a couple questions. I'm like, hey, you know, tell me what's really getting to you. And she says something like, you know, it's the constant this and the constant that. And I feel like I can't focus, and I'm super she's only in the 1st grade, so she's having a hard time articulating it. And so I said this, I was like, hey, tell me the names of 3 people that you're really struggling with. So she tells me 3 names. And I try to do my best psychoanalyst, like psychiatry. This is where the struggle comes from for my 6-year-old, and the fact that I know I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. And I go, let's say there was a name Steve. Definitely not. And I said, so let's take Steve, baby, and I want you to apply this to everyone. when you walk in this morning and you look at Steve, I want you to think about a few things. Do you know what compassion is? She says no. And I say, you know, when your brother gets hurt and you cry and you feel bad, is that because you got hurt? She says no. And I say, why is it? And she says, because I'm sad that he got hurt. I said, that's compassion. So when you walk in, I want you to think about why Steve might be acting this way. Like, do you think that maybe he's not getting attention at home, or maybe that, and we go through all the things, right? So now she's like, I'm going to do it. And I said, can we pray? And maybe you tell me how it goes when you get home. Yes, it's awesome. She's actually tearing up praying for Steve. Okay. Which is pretty cool. I don't care about Steve at all. In fact, I want to go in
Misty right now.
So here's where I'm going with this. I'm driving home by myself, and I'm so glad that she's in this moment. And any moment could do this. I get it, but I have to be authentic with myself and go, this is the moment that I've been in for at least 15 years of me going, God, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, there's so much pain everywhere.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to really care. Like the teacher, and I get it. I'm actually very compassionate for the teacher, but the teacher's just done. She don't care. She's like, just shut up. Because nobody's teaching any of you how to behave. You know what I'm saying? So like and you find yourself so despairing that it actually almost every day draws you back to your knees in some form or fashion, back to desperation. And I think when somebody said I could find it quickly, but somebody said, we're all going to crawl into the kingdom. Like missionaries are going to crawl into the kingdom, like army crawl. Our legs are blown off. We only got one arm. And I do think there's a picture there that we need to hold in front of us of like, man, if you've settled in and you're like, I'm super, I'm so happy all the time. I have everything I could ever want, blah, blah. Okay, cool. There's blessing there, but I'm going, I don't know. I don't know that that's for us in our time here. Mm-hmm. So what if here I'm passing it off. What if it really is like a good dad kind of thing going, I know this is tough. I know it's not like you'd rather just be in a nice, peaceful, everything sweet and calm and clean. But it's going to be really hard for me to help you understand compassion and empathy and mission and blah, blah, blah. And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
John, we were gonna take a staff cruise. I was going to take
mentioning that. Yeah.
We're going to head to Cancun, like do something like.
I'm still counting on that.
And what you're telling me, this is kind of crazy. The last 3 days, all throughout the days, in the heat stroke, whatever, I keep hearing the thing, you got to pick up the cross again. Mm-hmm. And it's been a fight. I'm like, no, I really don't want to, like, it's over in the corner of the room. Like, I don't want to keep working at this level. So that's probably what this podcast is probably about, my guess. It's not just a story of us in the post. It's probably this. It's a dad thing. Got to keep moving. What I'd like though, I'd love for the joy to return though. Like right now, we're all still a little cranky. Early days when we were working really hard, there was this kind of really fun joy and levity about what was going on. But I think when anybody has done a work for quite a while, that's probably what they're feeling. Like they're having a hard time finding the joy. They're willing to keep working, but
we should see if we could get, maybe Bill in Aliquippa or Desi in Globe, somebody that's been at this longer than all of us, and just ask that question.
Yeah.
Like, can you practically help us understand why? Are these seasons? Do the seasons come more often? See, for me, I've processed this with several people this year, 2024, of I think I thought that this would end. I think I thought we were actually going to bring heaven to earth, like fully. And we were going to go, we did it. And we live in this kind of euphoria, this, what's it called? What's it called, John? A state of bliss, like a kind of political state of bliss. What's the word I'm looking for? We live in this utopia. That's it. We live in this utopia and we're just all so happy. And I just am having to go, okay, I'm 43. I'm almost 30 years into this and it ain't coming.
Yeah, see, I don't think I've ever tried. I never thought utopia would happen. What I thought, or what I was shooting for, was that we are the founders. We're the ones that create the field for, and y'all now need to be the ones that are playing. To me, it was about like using my season. I'm 58, using my season of life to go, y'all, we put in our 8 years here. Y'all, like, I'll help oversee and give you a thumbs up. My struggle is the Lord going,
it ain't ever gonna
you it's not just another 8 years. I got you slated for another 28, bro.
And
That's
possibly
where
an
I struggle.
eternity.
Yeah.
And possibly an eternity. So a couple things come to
No,
mind.
don't be dropping this now like we're working this hard when this thing, don't be going there, Mr. Theologian.
Well,
Like,
so
always like, come on,
so
gotta be a rest.
I have so many things coming to mind and questions I want to ask, like circle back to the story, but like right now, I know this is not a comparison, but language I'm hearing reminds me of in season 1, we had an episode we called The Secret Sauce.
Yeah.
You remember? And
Yep.
Hugh, you talked about all the pain that you were going through with.
Yeah, well, I now disagree with that episode.
Well, and so you
Remove
just
it if you
mentioned
can,
the word levity, and actually that was a big feature of that, like the gallows humor and the place of levity and suffering. And you talked a lot about how suffering galvanized community. Like actually community was being formed and shaped because of the suffering, that God was somehow present in a way, uniting a community. And actually at some level you were like, the community then was demonstrating, kind of walking through a valley, the shadow of death together. And
I guess we're just doing that episode again.
Well,
Just realize we're just going to talk about the same things every season.
And that's the thing, is like, we remind each other, you know, like of these things. Cause like 2 words you also threw out, you said the joy to return. And then Taylor used the word happiness. And I think those are good to contrast, right? Like this isn't a happy season. But I do think like at some level, like joy is something that I do believe transcends circumstances. It's something like a state of being. And what I want to point out in what you're saying, like you said, I pictured this would come to an end. I thought I'd do 8 years, whatever you, but like all of that, just to point out, is like something like outcome orientation and expectations. And I think we've talked plenty in different, I don't know when, but like the idea that, like, I love this from 12-step meetings. They say this a lot. They have all these mantras in 12-step meetings where they say expectations are resentment under construction, or premeditated resentment. Like whether it's in a relationship you have, if like you have an expectation that isn't like communicate, like if I say, hey, I'll meet you at 2, you can expect to meet me at 2 because I said you can meet me at 2. But these expectations we have of God and of the work and of, you know, it's a way we disconnect from presence in the, like, to go like, we like, because in the best of times when you were really loving the work, you would probably, if I tapped you in those moments, be like, there's joy in the work. And you kind of go, man, I love the process. I just want to keep playing the game.
Yeah.
And you guys are saying, well, I expected the game to end. And I don't think if you were like, step out of yourself and like speak to yourself, I'm like, I don't think you really did.
Yeah.
You know?
No.
Yeah.
and those expectations I think are worth pointing out.
You're right.
Yeah. So here's like, and I've already seen it even in the last week. It's all about people again.
Mm.
New relationships, new talk, new dreams, new people being in the building, doing what they do. We just hired 2 new staff today, and I looked at their faces across the room. I haven't said hi to them yet, but I just heard those are 2 new, like, I just go, to me, that's the work. It's not fixing up a building or building a business out of it or whatever. And probably, I mean, if I go, well, why did the Lord oversee this entire 6-month fiasco? If he were to go, well, I think you guys might have been too focused on just getting resource to other leaders that would be doing the work. But I still want you actually with people. You still have gifts there. And I mean, that's a very high possibility that that's what's going on. And it's going to cause our entire team to rethink what they're doing. And yeah, so I mean, I guess for the listeners, stay tuned. We'll probably do a little podcast or maybe a few minutes sometime when we can look back and go, oh, this is why. We definitely learned these lessons in this. But I do think it's the bread on the trails we talk about. It's not, it's never the product, right? So for us to go, okay, we did the post, it's done, the product was done. So we would like to move on. We have to remember again, the product was not the building of the business. It's our presence in the city. God wants that to continue. So,
And by the way, you were wanting to continue that. You were just wanting to like plant new seeds, and you still do.
There's this old cheesy worship song that there's a line in it that says, "My serving you has replaced me knowing you." And it reminds me of that that Revelation passage. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Where the writer says you've done all these things great, like all your service has been excellent, but you've forgotten your first love.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't fully understand that, because to me, I mean, I do, but I don't. But
the work was the love.
Right. Through my paradigm, it's always been the ora et labora concept. Like, and I don't think these contrast directly, but if God if God is real and he knows me and he knows his people, our greatest kind of output or manifestation of love is being in the work. But I do think, and I have kind of voiced this over the past couple of months, is I think there's never a time in this like temporal journey that we can forsake knowing him.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I think there has to be a whole new podcast for that, but I would say there's like a simplicity and a childlikeness to end this whole talk with that of, there is a reason that he said to, I think it was the Ephesians, I think, that he said, like, all your work is great, but you've forgotten this love affair that you had, this obsession that you had with the presence of God. I just went on a little trip to meet with some people and pick up some materials for a project we're doing here. And I stopped in and saw like 3 old friends of mine that are still kind of doing this work. And the one thing I wanted to ask all of them is like, do you still have that fire in your eyes? Like, are you still obsessed like you remember being? Because I remember when they were. And I remember, like, if I saw my 18-year-old self now, or I would laugh at myself, I'd probably make fun of myself to you or you. And then I would go home and secretly be jealous of myself.
Totally.
Be like, man, I remember when I was like that guy.
Yep.
So I do, it's like marriage. It's, you don't have that anymore. It's normal, but there is something there that I want to uncover at some point and say, this might be part of what we're coming to is what a good dad to keep us in the work like I'm trying to do with my daughter, which seems very weird. You know, my 6-year-old daughter, I'm going, hey, you're in something really neat right now. Don't miss it. But I also think like I would with her, he would go, come out of it for a little bit. If you need a rest, if you need a breather, you know? So
We're going to call this one Money in the Bank or Bread on the Trail, which is better.
Oh, that's good. Can I ask?
That's probably summarizes it, honestly.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna write that down so I don't forget. I do want to ask you guys a practical question as you were telling the story of what happened. And I'm just thinking as a listener and also just as me. So you're waiting on a contract and then there's some weird stuff going on, but then you get this contract and there's this non-compete and some changes in a negotiated price or whatever. And you decided to say no. So I am a little curious about the decision. Like, I don't think you didn't speak to that. Like why?
Well, my email back to them saying these two things are deal breakers because we just can't, there's no possible way I could sign a non-compete.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was an easy decision. It actually made it easier. It was getting hard because we were starting to feel weird about it, trying to decide, are we going to pull the plug? We just said we can't move forward unless these are removed. Then they actually came back and went, well, we can't change them. So we're out. And we went, great. Well, then we're out as well. So at least we now agree on something. We're all out.
that is the practical, I would just say, John, because your question is actually kind of important. I think that we all knew, anyone connected, there was a handful of us. I think we all knew at least 2 weeks before that this probably wasn't going to happen. I think you might have been the first to know. And I actually laughed about it. I was like, dude, we might back out, but there ain't no way
Yeah, I remember that.
this is going to happen. This is not going to happen. But I know Lindsay and Hugh are probably the most involved in this deal. And we would sit up at night and go, it was a week before, 1 week before the contract was going to be signed. We like to come up here at night and have a meal like our family, because typically we'll run into one of our friends that lives on the street. And we have outdoor dining tables that just sit out there, patio tables. We'll bring food up here or pick something up from Old Bakery and bring it up here. And we'll almost always run into someone, invite them for a meal, and we'll just hang out. We're sitting up there a week before and we finish. Sure enough, Lori came up, had a meal with us, and we're finishing up and we go, there's just no way we can sell this place. That was kind of the definitive. So it was even before some of the contractual agreements were put in. I think we all knew, okay, we needed to go this journey, but it's probably not going to happen.
A little bit. I mean, well, maybe this is down the road, but there's a lot of real confusion for us and the town now because the people that were involved in this are actually really close friends. We love them. Some of them even believe in the same God, but we really feel like the decisions they're making would almost go against. Like we actually in this setting, we go, look, we don't know if we can work with you anymore if this is your philosophy of business in our town. So
meaning like don't compete with anything.
Like we just go, we can't support. I told Taylor, it's like me wanting to teach Jehovah's Witness how to do evangelism. Like I can't really do that because I don't really believe in your ultimate story that you're trying to recruit for. in this setting, it now makes it really awkward in working with these people in our city because I distrust their motivations right now. Time will tell. I mean, we have to do quite a few meetings probably for relational cleanup now.
Mhm.
And I'm just hoping God will win out on that. We'll get some clarity, but yeah, stay tuned. There's probably some stuff in there that we'll want to talk about.
Yeah.
Are you guys okay for a minute? I want to like scratch at one more thing. Is that you cool with
Yeah,
that?
sure,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's related and you don't need to be too particular here. I want you to try to like at the high level. You said I can't sign a non-compete. Can you now I know you mentioned the roaster and there's like specifics, but like can you just say more? Like why?
Well, before you give the practical, I'll just say that the simple, for me, it's a principle more than it is a direct action. I can't make an agreement with anyone that I won't create in my city. Spaces of hope and generosity and creativity.
Yeah.
So just the very act, think of it from a church planting, like an old school, old wineskin church planting paradigm.
Why I'm asking.
Like I come into a city and I spend time with some other church planters and they go, hey, tell you what, we actually want to fund what you're doing. But the only thing we ask is that you sign this document saying that you won't do it here.
Mm-hmm.
Like you won't do anything good here. It could have been, for me, it could have been a non-compete with an aerobics studio. And I would have said the deal is off.
Totally.
Like the very fact that you're saying you don't want me to bring prosperity, creativity, hope, and you know, social spaces to my city makes me realize, oh, this is not what I thought. There's no way that this partnership can work. Deal off.
Yeah. The same for me.
Yeah,
So.
no, and that's what I expected. So why I was asking was exactly this, because, you know, even as we contrast kingdom and empire and like there's things that we can like contrast with each other. And what came to mind, especially around a conversation of contracts, I always think like contracts and then covenant, right? Like those are things that I like, promises and culture and covenant, and then contracts. That's like a different thing, right? In terms of like market ideology or something versus like kingdom culture. And and so that's what I expected as well. And then, you know, one of the other things too, like that I would point out in it that I would contrast is something like a perceived there's a couple things. One is perceived scarcity. I would put in like the market side of things, like
Right.
there's not enough money, we can't get it done. And then the story you tell is like a story of like manna.
Yeah.
And that's actually one that's like kind of declares abundance, you know? It's like, yeah, I don't know where it's coming from, but like that's a little like there's abundance. It's like a mindset thing.
Yeah.
And I think contracts lean towards something like demanding certainty on one side, and I would contrast that with an embrace of mystery. Like,
well, a non-compete's also I want to win, you don't get to win. Like it's there's no community in a
zero
non-compete.
sum.
Yeah.
No,
Versus
I'm glad I asked, because I wanted to like highlight that, because I knew like at some DNA level this is kind of why.
yeah. And we also
but I can
know
imagine
like,
someone listening going, so you just said no.
like a non-compete, there are times where that might be appropriate. If I'm doing a specific type of law in a town of 12 people and I might want you not to do the exact form of law here because there's just not enough people. But when you're talking about in a service industry, food, beverage,
Yep.
selling cars, selling drugs, CVS and Walgreens have proven you can do quite well, and you can do well with 15 car dealerships all in the same row. And when we rolled in here, there was one coffee shop. Now there's 14. They're all doing great. So in the service industry, I don't think in any city, in any place, there should be a non-compete. It should be we're all helping each other. If we're causing people to go, hey, you should check out Alton.
To
Yeah.
be honest, it was just a truly unbelievable request that, you know,
And by the way,
revealed-
it could have been
revealed-
brought up at the very beginning and we wouldn't
Yeah.
have started. So to us, it was a dishonest addition.
But it was a revelation.
Yes,
It
and
unveiled
I would have,
something. That's
I would
right.
have not wanted to work with them on the dishonesty. Why would I want to give you access to this sacred space and all these people I love if deep down you're a dishonest person? Like,
Yeah.
so to me, it's a protection over people and over this town. That's probably a bit dramatic, but that's how I felt in the moment. Was I don't want you guys to screw this thing up. And we actually we're trying to believe really hard that you guys wouldn't screw it up. But now we know that you will based on this. So to me, the non-compete wasn't even about the non-compete.
There's this church in Alabama that likes to go into cities and take over struggling churches. You know, using the kind of cultural idea of church. So they'll find it, they'll kind of in a sense, they'll absorb it, and they'll begin to have their services and use their leadership, and that's part of their growth model. And good, bad, or indifferent, that's irrelevant. My point is
Consolidation model.
yeah, if part of their process, which it could be, but if part of their process was telling the missionaries or the leaders of that church, part of us taking this on is you have to sign a non-compete that you will not do mission in this city anymore. That would be unbelievable. And that's how it felt.
Yeah.
Because they know our mission, like they know what good and well, and have observed for 7+ years what it is. And so even if that was at the very furthest reach from the initial interest, even if it was all the way back here with like the contract writer, doesn't matter to me. It's like, okay, well then there's a breakdown somewhere. And because of that breakdown, we know, we can't do that.
And then I guess we'll wrap up here, but I want to just close with this. The story you told about your daughter, was it Steve? Is that the name we used?
Yeah.
And to say to her, like, you know, when you see him, like, ask yourself, like, what might be going on in his life that would cause him to act out or behave this way. And then just to remind you and me and everyone listening that, like, we do run into this opposition because empire is the world we live in. We are exiles in a place that is foreign and strange. And there's let's say, bad behavior of other kids.
Yeah.
And yet also the call to like compassion and have generous eyes to go like that. It's still relational. There's still process. There's still like work to be done in those relationships. And I'm super grateful we did this. Thank you guys for like talking through all this. I think this was really good. I think it'll be really valuable to people listening as well. And I can't wait to like the story will go on.
Yep, for sure. All right. Peace out.
Peace.